Okay, good evening. I'll call the school committee meeting to order on June 15. And as we've been doing, I'll read the script for remotely conducted open meetings, or at least some of it. As a preliminary matter, this is Paul Brennan, Chair of the Sutton School Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So members, when I call your name, could you please respond in the affirmative? Peter Tufts?
Here.
Nate Jerome?
Here.
Bruce Edwards?
Here.
Kristen Pfeiffer Clark?
Thank you for getting it right.
I'm trying. We're getting closer.
You got it.
Ted Friend? He's on mute, but Ted's here.
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm sorry.
Excellent. And Nancy Kaninsky?
Here.
Excellent. I don't think did I get Kaninsky right?
You did.
Don't worry, we're using this time. We won't finish the whole 3 sheets because of that. Good evening. This open meeting of the Sutton School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. I'm learning that today's meeting is actually going to be live streamed, and I'm also learning in the agenda is the phone number so that you can dial in for public comment period. So we're all getting a little better at this. So that's that section. For this meeting, the school committee is convening by video conference via the Zoom app. This was posted on the town's website. Note, this meeting is being recorded, so if you don't have your microphone on mute, whatever you say will be recorded. Take care not to share anything on your screen that you don't want to be shared. All of the meeting materials were posted on the Sutton School website. Meeting business ground rules. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members. Right there, ready to go. Ask you to provide comments, questions, or motions. If we get to a conversation, I'll come back around again for comments. So if you're first, don't worry, you get to go again. For any responses, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you. State your name. If you want to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, and each vote will be taken through roll call. Excellent. First item on the agenda was the call to order. We got that covered. Consent, and public forum. Is there anybody who's on who wanted to speak to public forum? This would be the time to take your phone off of mute and let us know. Hearing none, other than the person who's scrambling to try to find that mute button, I'm going to go right to the consent agenda. This is the minutes of June 1 and bill schedules of June 1 and June 8. Kristen, you're going to be top of the list. I'm looking for a motion.
I move to present to approve the consent agenda as presented.
And a second from Bruce.
Second.
Excellent. Questions, comments, Kristen?
I had one question that I put to Nancy, and I'm hoping she can go over that.
Yep.
Do you want me to read the question?
Sure.
Okay, then you got to bear with me a minute. Got to get back to my email to do that.
Oh, I have it in front of me. You want me to
Okay.
say it? Okay. So Kristen had a question. It was on page 8. There was a purchase to RH White in the amount of $19,521.53. And she was wondering what that was for. So that was the work that was done in the fire pump house for the sprinkler system. That was when we had the load of water that we couldn't figure out what it was for. So that's what that was for. If you want further detail, let me know. But Roger explained that at a prior meeting, so.
Other questions, Kristen?
I think Kristen's frozen.
I think she is.
Kristen, can you hear us?
Very hard.
We'll come back to Kristen. Bruce, questions?
I have none.
Nate,
No questions. Thank you.
Pete,
No, thank you.
I have no questions. If Kristen comes back, as she's frantically wishing she could get back in, we'll see if that answers her questions. I'll tell you what, let's take the vote. We'll do a roll call vote. And then if we need to, we'll come back and get the questions answered. So it's a roll call vote. Bruce Edwards.
Aye.
And Nate. Now with the mute off. Jerome, aye. And Pete.
Tough sigh.
And Brennan, aye. So that's going to carry 4-0 with one frozen. Next item on the agenda is a budget update. There's no motion anticipated. So Nancy, actually, if you can give us a budget update.
Sure. So I just wanted to update that we're still on track in rolling over approximately 500,000. This could possibly be more depending on the outcome of the transportation payment with AA. And based on the 500,000, this will give us a balance of approximately 1.1 million in school choice at the end of this school year. So we had our finance meeting last week, and the town is still planning to give us an additional 400,000. And at this time, we do not have clarity with the revenues from the state. So once we have more clarity, we will come back to make our recommendations to the committee as to how we will make our budget balance. And then I know Kristen's not here, but she did send me some questions on the year-to-date budget. So I'll go through and cover those. Or do you want me to kind of skip that?
You know what? Let's fingers crossed. She's going to pop back up here in a second when she gets the connection. Let's go to questions, and if you can do that at the end, hopefully she'll have been able to come back on.
Sure.
Bruce.
Yeah, questions on the budget. I'm still confused as to how transportation budgets for SPED are fully spent when we've been out since March.
Are you talking about the salary line item or repair line item?
I've got, I'm on page 35, contract transportation, contract services, transportation bus monitors, either each, it's 201,482. That looks like elementary school or early learning center, 214,650 for looks like elementary school, 192, 150 looks like middle school, and then in high school. I'm just trying to figure out how those.
Okay. So do you see where it shows encumbrances?
Yeah.
And see that there, and it shows 64,770 and then 64,770.
Yep.
So that is money that has been encumbered because we had a contract with Aaa Transportation, but that money has not been spent to date. But I have left it encumbered until we determine what we're going to pay Aaa Transportation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Nate
No additional questions. Thank you.
and Pete?
No further questions. Thank you.
Can you share Kristen's questions with us?
Sure. Kristen's first question was on page 9 for the elementary school teachers. She was wondering why that was over on the line item, and I was going to state that that's actually not elementary school teachers, it's high school teachers. It's mislabeled in Munis. And the reason that is over is because the school choice allocation has not been applied. We usually determine that at the end of the school year. So that was her first question. And then she had a question on page 51 and 52 regarding the overages for building other expenses. And so the building other in the elementary school is over due to $10,000 due to exhaust fans that needed to be replaced. And the building other in the middle school is over by approximately $23,000. And building other expenses in the high school is over by approximately $8,000. And these are both due to the fire that we had on the telephone pole in back of the high school at the beginning of the school year. It caused the power to go up and down, and it prevented the AC from working. So those were all repairs that were related to that. So those were Kristen's questions.
Unmute, Kristen.
Oh, and there she is. Did you hear that?
I'm back and I heard absolutely nothing.
Froze again.
Oh, gosh.
Oh.
Should I, what do you want me to do?
Well, let's see if it's she's really back or not.
I don't think she's back.
This is why I come to work. House.
See, I only come to work on, what's that, Friday after Thanksgiving, or Monday, Cyber Monday. Gotta make sure you got the good internet then. There's no motion anticipated there. I think what we'll do is it's on recording, and then ask Kristen if she can give you a call and just clarify with those. She's back.
Okay. Do you want me to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that it on the budget update? We've gone through with questions, or is there additional?
In regards to the budget, no, but there's other items I would like to talk about, if that's okay.
I think so. I'm scanning over here on the agenda and don't see it. So yeah, what do you got?
So I wanted to to update the committee on Munis for next fiscal year, because normally at this time of year is when I go into Munis and I kind of update and make my final budget adjustments. And all the adjustments need to be made by the end of June. And they can't be changed once the new fiscal year starts. So, I'd like to make the budget as accurate as possible, because we use Munis to forecast and you guys get it at each meeting to look at. So currently the STA members are input in Munis with a 2% increase with steps and lanes. But I just kind of wanted to bring that up because at this point in time, we don't have an agreement reached with the STA union. So therefore, it might be difficult with the Munis report next fiscal year for you guys, for me to forecast with it if that's not what's agreed upon, and for you guys to follow in Munis. So I kind of just wanted to bring that up to you.
Is that by law that you can't adjust once it's set, or is that the tool itself?
It's the tool itself. It's Munis.
And Munis isn't going to go back and take care of that for all of the other towns who won't have a budget set until well after the year.
Yeah, I don't know about the other systems, but
No, the other communities.
So all the other communities using Munis are going to run into the exact same problem. They're not going to have a budget that's settled at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. So it's going to definitely affect the reports that I give you throughout next year, kind of following as to where we are.
So I think the proposal would have been actually, I'm going to propose that the budget is what we have put forward, the one that has been approved, that's what we put in short of anything else. But then I'll go around, Kristen. See, I jumped the line, but Kristen, thoughts on what you want to do with?
No thoughts right now. Unfortunately, I can't hear you well.
So I'm trying to get a good connection.
So we can either hear you or you can hear us, but not. Bruce, thoughts on what we do with this?
I'm good to use 2% as a holding spot and proceed with what we've come up with for a budget to.
Right, and then we'll change again. Yeah, Kristen.
I can actually hear everybody now. Not actually good with any increase for next year. I'm concerned about next year. So I'm not comfortable with saying 2% is good.
So for sure, we're assuming that the 2% is going to be part of discussions that haven't settled yet. The question is, what do you load into Munis for the end of this month? That once you do that, that'll sort of snap a line for that's what the budget is for the fiscal year, unless Munis fixes that. So what we'd have to do is, I think, be more careful about making budget adjustments early in the year and probably having to compare those outside of Munis.
I guess I'd be okay as long as it is solely a placeholder and is not something we're going by. Do you know what I'm saying? I don't want it to be a given.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Okay. Bruce?
So my thought.
Yeah, I mean, again, we haven't had the negotiations. I look at the 2% as a placeholder, and I'd rather have it in. And if it falls below that, that's fine. I don't see it exceeding that, but I mean, because it's in line with what the expiring contract is and what's going on. I just don't want to have us. I just don't want us to get in a situation where we don't have a relatively solid number in there, and we have to start playing games and extend every meeting with budget discussions and reiterate the same thing. You know, this is what we're backtracking, and we've got to repeat. We put 2% in for this and that and blah blah blah. Let's just know that we went in at 2. I think it's a fair number to start with for budgeting purposes, and I think it'll make our lives a little easier come next year.
And Nate?
You know, in regards to the 2%, I don't have any comments. I'm okay with that. I just, it's been 10 years I've been looking at Munis, and I just continue to be unimpressed. From my view, it's not a very helpful software. It's just, we've always been told it's what most people use, and we often seem trapped by it. The output from it is not pretty. Even tonight, we had an example where something was for the high school. You could see the 004, but it's listed as elementary. You know, I think in the past it's been cost prohibitive, but I really don't care for Munis. But again, that's neither here nor there. So I'm okay.
And Pete?
Yeah, I agree with everybody else. The you know, placeholder is fine. Pretty uncertain year coming up, so I think to say it's a given is probably not the correct way to go.
Right. The only other alternative, and I think it's exactly what you said, Bruce, is with this path, we end up encumbering meetings with, hang on a second, what did we really mean? And I sort of leaned towards what we've approved now, and we snap the line there. But if folks are sort of nodding, saying, "Fine, I'll do that," the other piece is to say, we want you to take down the salary lines. I just worry that that's going to have as much conversation with which lines did we take down or which didn't we, or where did we land. That the fewer times we do it, the better. And then regarding Munis, I agree, Nate. I'm sort of surprised that they're not going to come up with a fix or a patch for this for all the other towns. And I think the big selling point has been, but that's what the town uses. So if we're on Munis, it all rolls in, and there's advantages to that. I certainly hope they're large. So the direction is you load up the approved budget at the time that you load it. And right now we've not made adjustments to that budget with the understanding that all of the salary lines are placeholders that in a different year, we would have had between now and then time to finish negotiations, and we haven't. So that's a placeholder.
Okay.
What else have you got?
So I wanted to just bring up the topic of Aaa Transportation with paying them during the school closure. So we've offered to pay Aaa 75% for the months of May and June, which is $64,395 for each month. Aaa wanted us to pay 75% for April, May, and June. So Aaa actually reached out to me today, and they have agreed to our proposal for 75% of May and June. So this would give us a savings of $115,290.
What was the April percentage?
So each month is $64,395. So we'll be saving.
So we're not paying anything for April, just 75 for May and June, 0 in April.
Correct. Yep. So the Mass General Law, since the whole COVID crisis, has been changed, and it allows us to make payments for services not rendered. And the other thing, that Aaa will have to submit a sworn statement that the payments in combination with the CARES Act cannot be in excess of the original contracted price. And I connected with Aaa Transportation today, and he would be fine submitting a statement certified saying that.
Any feedback from Town Hall?
I had spoke to Jim Smith and Tim Harrison about this when we first proposed this idea, and they were in support of this arrangement. You know, there were 2 school districts, I think, out of 13 that did not pay them their original fee. I think the other districts, their biggest concern was to make sure they had a transportation system in the fall. And it's unfortunate that we didn't work closely, or they didn't work more closely with us. The difficulty I had for April was they laid off all the drivers immediately. And so there was no, and that's about 50% of their cost. So to ask us to pay 75% when they had no labor costs made no sense to me. Since then, they've brought those workers back, and they're being paid so they keep their workforce intact. And I believe he's applied for the COVID federal stimulus money. And again, I think for me, we want to make sure we have a bus company in place for the fall, but we also want to make sure that we're fair to the taxpayers, and that we're not we're paying to keep our drivers and our buses ready to go in the fall. And I think that splits the difference here with what's being presented to Aaa Transportation from the town of Sutton.
Kristen?
Okay, where do I start? I still have tons of concerns with this. If he is applying for or has applied for triple P, that will cover salaries for 8 weeks. So they can't be collecting unemployment. And if we're paying them at the same time, they're getting paid twice. And that's one of my concerns. I'm just concerned that it's dip after dip after dip. We're not in the business of necessarily keeping them in business. He's a large business. He should be planning appropriately for the future. And I don't think we need to support him to that degree. Yes, I understand we're looking for bus transportation for fall, but to also, to the point of the little memo that went around, I'm concerned about that. Threatening to not uphold the contract for next year because we won't agree to a payment now is not okay in my book. I don't know what the other towns did, but according to Mass General Law that was enacted on June 5th, they acted inappropriately if they did sign prior to June 5th. Go ahead. Sorry, Nancy.
Hang on.
Sorry.
You want to, what I don't want to do is go back and forth to each and every point. If
Sure.
Nancy, if you want to cover that one, but we could end up with a real back and forth with 4 of us waiting for.
Yeah. I'm good. My concern is it is that's a lot of money to support somebody for not doing a job. We're already strapped for cash, and I'm sorry, this is hurting everybody, but does that really mean that we need to pay them for something that we haven't had delivered? That's all.
And you wanted to clear a couple of points up, Nancy.
Yeah, I just wanted to, you mentioned about what other school districts did. As you know, I worked with 13 other school districts who have Aaa Transportation as their vendor. All but one other school district and us have agreed to pay the 75%. I spoke to a couple of the other schools that have paid, and they felt that they had to secure busing for next year. They were nervous that there was, they were going to run into an issue with having busing. The one school that has not paid has just laid off over 50 teachers, and they just don't feel that it's fair to pay that. And then they would have to lay off even additional teachers on top of the 50 that they just laid off. So that's the situation that they're in.
And Bruce?
Just want to be sure I'm clear on this, Nancy. So we would make no payment for March or April. We would only pay 75% for May and June.
Correct.
Okay.
Hold on.
I'm more comfortable. Yes, Ted.
We paid March, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
We did pay March.
I didn't catch
no
that.
payment April.
Sorry.
In May and June at 75%.
Thank you, Ted.
I just want to clarify that.
Yes, thank you. We paid March. We didn't. So no April, 75% for May, 75% for June.
Okay. But if May and June are equal months, I don't understand how the payment is equal for those 2 months. But again, that's small. My concern in all of this is I want to be aware of the struggles in the past in securing busing contracts for the district. I'm concerned that we only get one vendor to submit a bid. I'd really like to know why we only get one vendor. What are the reasons that other vendors won't submit a bid? Is it cost? Is it they don't have the capacity? Is there something that's happened in the past? Do we know why other vendors have not submitted bids? Ted?
So this is an issue for all school districts. No one gets a second bid. All the superintendents in the Blackstone Valley and across the state complain about this constantly, that it's a rigged system. No one gets more than one bid. We have this battle all the time. We've talked about different ways to get more bids, but we put it out, and I think in the last 3 contracts, we saw one other vendor come through once to pull out the papers and never submitted a bid. And it's a big, big problem for the state of Massachusetts. I don't know about the rest of the country, but it is an ongoing issue, and I don't know the answer to it, but it's basically a monopoly. And I don't know how to get other bids, and nor do any of the other superintendents in the area know how to get other companies to bid for the service.
And
How
Nate?
long have we contracted with AA?
They were here before I got here 10 years ago. So they've been our vendor for a long time. And their service has been very good. I want to be clear about that, but to not have a second bidder or a third bidder, they basically can ask for what they want, and we're left holding to have to go with them. It's very unfortunate.
And Nate?
Are you all set, Bruce?
I get two more points if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't, but what I don't want to do is do a bunch of ping pong meetings and try to, but go ahead, Bruce.
So what I'm trying to figure out is, and this was my ask at the very beginning when this came up, is I'm not opposed to paying them part of the costs to continue. what I want is I want to see, I want you to prove to me what those costs were. I don't want you just to come out and say, pay me 75%. I want to know what your expenses were short of, I mean, you laying off all your drivers. I want to know, I mean, I'm not going to pay you for fuel that you weren't using, and I don't want to pay you for drivers that you laid off. So I want to know what your actual costs were. To be fair, I mean, you telling me 75%, prove it to me. Prove to me that 75% is the number that's fair. And then the other part is, I have concerns over AA trying to recoup this loss when they come back and negotiate next year's or the year after's contract. You know, that's a big concern for me. They can agree to this number now and then down the road say, okay, you know, we know we're your only vendor and here's your price. And I mean, I don't like being, I don't want us to be held hostage to that. I don't want to use another word, but I have big concerns over that.
Yep.
And Nate?
Yeah, so I mean, my stance is the same. You know, we do need to keep AA viable for all the reasons we mentioned. And, you know, as Ted had mentioned, it's kind of across the state, which it really is the definition of collusion. And it's frustrating. And I'm not saying AA has been a good partner for us. I think they've been pretty good. We have an idea from internal costs for transportation. So I don't necessarily feel like they're gouging us, but it is frustrating when you don't see any competition. And that's been a frustration. I've been here shortly after Ted, and that's all I've ever seen is AA, you know, bid for these contracts. And unfortunately, at this point, we are kind of stuck. I don't know if it's the state or who needs to jump in on that, but in this juncture, we do need to keep AA viable and try to support them. I commend you guys, Nancy, Ted, for working to try to get a reduced rate. I also, from what I read, and I might misunderstand this and you can address it after, it did sound like, you know, they have to testify if asked based upon afterwards. If we give them 75% and then they get some sort of assistance that would bring in, say, 50%, they would have to testify to that and explain. They can't make more than what the contract was. So I don't know how some sort of refund would go. I don't know how they dish it back out to the districts, but that part I think about. And aside from that, like I said, we're stuck for the fall. We need them. And as I would echo what Bruce said, I just hope this isn't something that I guess gets held against us going forward. So that's my thoughts on it. Thanks.
Yeah, great points by everyone. We're in a tough situation. We need a bus company and there's only one willing to take the job. So I agree. It's crazy that we're spending all this money on something that's not even being served to us, but we do need to have a bus company in September.
Yeah,
That's all I got.
I don't mind keeping them afloat. I don't, much like what Bruce has said, I don't know how we see enough of the math to understand how that's working out. If they're getting grants, are they getting grants for 25% plus our 75%, yet they're seeing fuel cost reductions? It doesn't, that math doesn't smell right. And so I think that part needs to be sorted out. I don't know that it precludes us from moving forward with having to make sure that we're in line in September. Much like folks, I feel the same way around. So what do we do? And I wonder if this isn't something more at the state level that just says, how can our state legislators help with getting a more competitive environment for the busing? AA's been here as long as I know, and the same thing. I think they've been a good partner. I think that when we've had concerns with buses, when we've changed routes around, they have really tried to make sure they provide a good service. So you know, there's a level of comfort there that I think they've been a good partner. Still, with all this working out, I'd like to see the math, and I'd like to make sure we keep with somebody, not just when we have to negotiate another rate, but if we all of a sudden need to change capacity quickly, if we're trying to find an alternative for the capacity we have now, it would be even harder for upside. I don't know whether Nancy.
So Bruce brought up the comment about the expenses in the past, kind of to get a feel of where AA is. And I did bring that up to them, and they don't feel that, they don't want to share it. They don't feel that they should have to share that with us.
We're going to go around the horn again. Don't worry, everybody's going to get another chance.
So that's what I don't know if I went back a second time how he would feel about it, but the first time I don't think that was going to be an option that he was willing to do.
I wonder whether what we need to do is talk to Ted and Mike around what are they obligated to do. Yeah, Ted.
So we passed this along to Mike Long, and Mike Long, as you could imagine, has been doing some of this negotiation with other communities. And when they peeled back the onion, they found that approximately 50% of the cost of running a bus transportation system is labor. So the office people, the drivers, everybody. So that's what they did. So what we're basically paying is 52% overall over these 3 months. If you average it out, it might be 56%. So if you know, and again, I think part of it is maintaining their fleet, the insurance on the buses and those types of things. I think asking for 75% a month, they're probably making money above and beyond. And that's why they're required to submit a letter of affidavit saying that they are not making any more money, or they're not making additional money as a result of this crisis. But again, this is what happens when you have a monopoly. You know, they've got these communities and they know they have them and they can play hardball. And I'm glad that this board pushed back on Nancy and I and said, no, we're not paying all that money, and we were able to recoup an additional $64,000. So
Kristen?
that's what I know.
I don't know. The word that comes to mind is extortion. I am not liking this at all. I find this wholly and completely unacceptable. I don't feel that we are in the business of keeping somebody else in business. Yeah, we do need their services, but the other thing is we're talking about monopoly. What happens if they go under? Somebody else is going to move into their territory. And that's one of the reasons why nobody else bids for us right now, is because it's all territory. Look at what AA claims for an area they serve. It's territory. So maybe it's a good thing if they go under, because maybe somebody else will come in. Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there, but I don't like it. That's my comment.
And Bruce?
My question is for Nancy and Ted. Under the MGL change, they sign an affidavit on this. What exists, or what is the means to check? Who's checking their number? There's got to be a way to check their math. I mean, signing an affidavit saying this is it and not having a way to verify what their numbers are is a useless affidavit. It means absolutely nothing. So where's the oversight? Who's conducting the oversight on this?
I don't know. But what we will do is we will go back to Aaa Transportation and say, the committee is willing to agree to this offer. However, they want some more facts. They want to make sure that, you know, we're not paying you more than what you deserve to be paid. So they need some, you know, some information to go on before we make this final decision. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask of this committee.
Okay.
I think it's
I'm
gonna
not
be a
opposed,
state oversight.
and I'm not opposed to paying them, you know, the cost to maintain the fleet and the inspections and the repairs and all that sort of stuff. But that's what I want to pay. I don't want to pay. I mean, there should not be additional profit made in because of fuel costs, lack of fuel costs, drop in fuel costs, or not having to pay employees. That's what I want to make sure.
Right. So they brought their employees back, so you cover that cost, and you cover that. Does that 25% or the 6% extra above the labor cost, is that the right amount of money? And we'll get that information.
Thank you.
And again, I don't know what the oversight is on this. I think it's such uncharted territory. They've never done this before, so we'll look into that as well.
Nate,
Yeah, from the sounds of everything, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of oversight in place anyway. So hopefully that's something that comes, in the near term. But I really don't have anything to add from what I said earlier. So I still stand the same.
Pete?
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Yeah, as much as conversations with AA, and again, I think they've been a very good partner when we've been operating, despite not having competition. And I for sure appreciate that some of this isn't just maintaining the fleet, but if it is an AA, if it's somebody else whose bus service exists, to add enough buses to bring on a town would take a little bit of time, right? It's the outlay, and if AA went under, then they're selling buses and somebody picks up the buses. But otherwise, it's who has the assets to be able to service the towns. I go back to as much a question to AA is the question I think to the state in terms of with these affidavits, who at the state level can provide some level of oversight to look at, to know that the margin on the business isn't better because the fuel dropped, right? If the affidavit says we didn't have any more revenues than we thought we were going to have, that's really not what we're asking about. And I think that piece we ought to be talking to again. I think we start with legislators and find out, is anybody at the state level talking about what the appropriate oversight is? Any more? I'm going to assume that the guidance to the administration is that we can agree to, but we're still looking for data that they can execute on the 75% May, June, 0% April. It wasn't a vote, but and Kristen.
I guess the key then to all of this is if you're really looking to move forward, that we're looking to know exactly what we're giving you this dollar amount, and why can't we then specify it can go towards this, and this, if we can't reliably count on the state to enforce that. A contract that says it can only go to these things, I could only think would be better than that.
I'm a little concerned that we entered a contract with them to provide services. It's a private business, and they're under no obligation to talk about how they work their efficiencies or how they compete with others who might try to enter the business. We contractually aren't obligated or to know what their margins are. That's not how we entered. We entered in a price. But I think these are unique times that maybe this flushes out a little bit of what we talked about, where there's only the one or two. And I'm coming back to you, others on the committee. I don't see anybody. Kristen.
So it's just that I'm not interested in the margin. I'm just saying we could eliminate all of those questions by saying, all right, we're giving you this, and it's covering this, and this. Obviously, he can still change it to whatever he wants to apply it to, I guess, ultimately. But I mean, if you want us to pay us something, you've got to prove, I'm sorry, I feel you've got to prove what it's going to and why. Okay.
Bruce.
I could chat on this for.
No, you couldn't. Your internet wouldn't handle it. Nancy, you got other items? It said, by the way, it just said budget update. It was going to be like 5 minutes. I'm just.
I know, very cumbersome. All right, this is my last one. So at our last meeting, transportation came up, so I wanted to revisit that. In your packet, you will find a listing. It's a listing of repairs, where we stand in our current budget, our fleet information, and our special education transportation revolving account. And I have it forecasted out with buying new vehicles in the future years. And I listed the mileage in my forecasting out of buying the vehicles. So I wanted to go over that with you and make sure you had an understanding of it. So if you're looking at the spreadsheet, so the top part is for the expenses that we have year to date. And then I did forecast out the remaining of the years because our fleet is currently going through inspection at this point in time. So for repairs and preventative maintenance, I think we'll come in at about $28,000. For fuel, we're going to come in at $16,000. 12,000 of that comes out of our general budget. 4,000 of that comes from a grant. Our inspections for the vans are $840 and tolls are $815. So the biggest repair that I wanted to highlight was on our athletic bus, which is bus 3. It was a $9,000 repair. It was unexpected. It's new brakes, rotors, exhaust pipe, new power steering lines. And so that covers the repairs. Does anybody have questions on the repairs? Do you feel like you want more detail than what was provided?
Kristen. And Bruce?
Yeah, I think I'm good. I guess I was trying to figure out is what was the savings? What was the budgeted number for the year? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yep. So in the next, if you go down to the next column, you'll see the budgeted amount for FY20 was $42,520. And I have us coming in at approximately $42,555.
So that $9,000 repair ate up the savings from March, April, May, and June. That's what I'm struggling with.
I'm not following you.
So I think the question is, so this line we've played with over the years. 4 or 5 years ago, we had in that line item $80,000. And every year we'd have $40,000 remaining. We dropped it down to $60,000, and then we still had $20,000 savings. So we dropped it down to $42,500, and all of a sudden now these expenses have gone up in the last few years, and we've been short in these accounts. So it's really a question of, have we allocated enough money in that line item to cover the repair costs going forward? And we've broken even. We broke even last year. And the only reason why we broke even this year was because we didn't use the vans for the last 65 days. So right now we had increased that budget line item by $5,000. But if we have another repair, like an unusual repair of $9,000 or $10,000, we're probably looking at being upside down in that line item next year as well. So it's really a question of, do we increase that line item maybe by an additional $5,000 going forward, which will probably cover those expenses in the future.
So by not using the buses in the end of March, April, May, and June, so 3 months, that savings was offset by the $9,000 maintenance. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Overall maintenance, not just that, but we just spent more money than we did the previous year and the previous year before that. So it's the combination of everything. But the 9,000 was a big hit.
That
We
was
haven't seen a $9,000 hit like that in a long time. So there is really no savings there. It prevented us from having a significant loss in that line item.
Even if we didn't have the 9,000 and school continued, I think we would have been very, very close, if not slightly over.
That's,
I
that's
think
right.
that's
That's
where you're going,
what I
right?
was looking for,
Yeah.
Nancy, right there.
Yeah.
That's the answer to my question. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
And Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate this. I appreciate the effort. I feel like every time we do this, you need a trained eye and a little bit more to piece everything out. We've talked about it many times. I still want to kind of get back to that transportation report that we had a couple years ago. We were on a start. It was good. Ideally, I'd like something like that where anybody in the district could pick it up and kind of get an idea of, okay, I can read this, I can understand it, and explains it. It's almost appropriate that this follows the long discussion about AA and, being held hostage by that a little bit, which, then leads into the reason why, partly the reason why, along with savings, that we go through this, because I still don't believe this is at all an easy task to do in district. We here's the cost, but I think there's a lot of cost when it comes to personnel hours and things like that, and stress and frustration. So I'm one of those that's always on the fence of, that's worth something. And if the savings aren't great enough, why are we in the transportation business? So nothing we're going to solve quickly, but I would advocate for putting together a subcommittee, with some of us from school committee or others, to try to revisit the report we had before and try to plug a couple things in to make this not a painful process, especially for you, Nancy, and anybody else. And it's something that would be easy for anybody from the community to read and understand. That's what I'd like to try to approach. So I'd volunteer to be on the committee if the rest of the school committee sees that valuable. So.
Oh, I wrote Nate. And Pete?
Yeah, I think all valid. I worry if anyone's ever had a car that sat in the driveway for 6 months and then tried to start it up. I worry about these vehicles just sitting around. Are they at people's homes? Are they someplace central?
I had them all returned to the school.
Yep.
And currently we're in the process of getting them inspected. So at least they're getting started and driving around a little bit.
Good.
But they're all back at this time at the school.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
I kind of back of the envelope, right? So we've spent 16 grand on fuel for, is it about 8 months that we covered?
Yeah, 7.5. Yep.
So call it $2 grand a month in fuel. We missed 3 months. So
Actually, this includes, sorry to interrupt, this includes summer school too. So it starts as of July 1st of last year. So it's some of the vans are used for summer. And
so it's without being able to kind of zoom in on the resolution. I looked at that and thought, okay, so that the 9 grand, and it I think feeds what Ted was saying. It's not all fuel. If we did 16 grand to cover the first part, then I don't know that we were looking at another, or the summer school would have been in this year also. So we would have seen about 9 grand more in fuel, you think?
so hard.
Right. So that's all right. I mean, I was just trying to kind of rough it out, and we knew the actual fuel expenditures and the time period. So if you just did 8 and 3 months, I think that's about 6 or so grand. So
Yeah.
There's more in the maintenance. Well, I have no idea what I wrote there, so it probably wasn't that interesting. But I agree with you, Nate. For me, this has always been one that I have a hard time understanding, and I think needs to have a regular cadence of review, and like we did years ago with the budget process, which I think has gotten much more steady. I think what we do with the revolving accounts has gotten much easier to understand. I think if we had a couple of folks who would be willing, really just one other, to join Nate, to talk about how do we get a format that doesn't take you, a day a week all year to keep up, but that when we get into these questions, it's sort of a, well, let's just call up the report that you all have seen in the past. Pete, you're down at the bottom of the list, so it would,
No, I'd be happy to help Nate out with that for sure.
anybody feeling left out? Other items, Nancy?
No, that is it. Oh, I do
Item-
have one more.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, you said no.
It's really quick. It's
What do
really
you got?
quick.
Oh,
I just wanted to report that we received, we've been issued a waiver for food services to serve meals over the summer. We worked up the figures, and as long as we serve 125 families a week, we'll break even. So at this time, we're planning to move forward with that, and we'll monitor the number of families as we go throughout the summer.
Kristen?
Then I'm really done.
That sounds like a great idea. Perfect.
And Bruce?
Oh, are we serving 125 right now, Nancy?
Today, we served 252. So we're way above that.
Nate?
No, that's great to hear. I appreciate it. I'm glad people are taking advantage of it and we can help the community. Thank you.
And Pete?
Nice work, Nancy. That's great.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Next item is a MOU regarding the Sutton Teachers Association. This will be a vote. So we'd be looking for a motion. Have we seen, has anybody seen that the MOU exists? I don't mind the motion being made and then some correction, but we have to have at least seen it. Yeah. All right, Ted, if you want to give us a rundown, and then I'll ask for a motion.
I'm sorry, I thought we had sent this to you. All we're doing here is we traditionally pay our teachers over 26 pay periods. And every 4 years, they skip a week. So instead of skipping and having an extra week without pay, we're just going to divide the paychecks over 27 pay periods. That way it's the same amount of money. They just get their pay over 27 pay periods. That's the essence of the MOU.
This wasn't our packet.
It wasn't in your packet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kristen, are you willing to make a motion?
I move to present the MOU as presented.
And a second?
Second.
Questions, comments, Kristen?
Yeah, I guess. Can you hear me?
Mostly.
Okay. I'm okay with the portion on the 27 installments. Not so sure I'm comfortable moving forward with the increases. I'm just concerned about the environment that we've got moving into next year and how things are going to change.
We're not, this doesn't include the increases. This has nothing to do with that. Until we get a settled contract.
Okay,
no increases in this.
but the MOU has that language in there.
General salary increases. It's just to cover when an increase
Yeah.
actually kicks in.
Hang on, if we can
Sorry.
answer from there. And Bruce, if you have questions.
No, I was just going to say, the way I read it, it's when increases occur, they'll roll in on that. That's when they'll roll in. There's no guarantee on increase. There's no increase stipulation. It just says if there are increases, that's when they'll be effective, and that's when they'll start to roll in this pace of that'll be the first time in the pay cycle that they will hit.
This wouldn't
Okay.
preclude any raises from, or any increases from.
Right, but it says, so it's made a definitive statement though. It says salary increases are effective. So it's not that they will be or they could be, it's that they are.
So I'm concerned with the definitive statement, and I'm not comfortable with that.
Nate, we'll come back. Nate, questions?
No, this makes sense to me. Yeah, it's just a shift in the payment schedule.
And Pete?
Yep, same thing. I'm okay.
So the question really becomes, I think, the only question in there is how do we ensure that the MOU doesn't make any, take on any obligation for pay increases? And do you have a suggestion for a change in wording or?
Other than, I mean, it's a possibility. But do we really need that in? Because if all we're talking about is 27 installments, isn't that statement, wouldn't that statement then not really need to be said? I mean, but you also, do we have something moving forward? I mean, this is only talking about where we're going to pay. So I wouldn't even include the salary increases, but that's just my thought.
Nancy?
So currently on the pay schedule that they receive, it's arranged by date. So I think that's why that's put in there. So it's just saying that the one they have now starts a week later. So this would push it to a week earlier. So I think that's why the date was put in.
Okay, so then maybe it's, if salary increases are to occur, they will be effective as of 8/20/2020.
I just make it simple and say salaries are effective on August 20th, 2020.
Sure.
Take out the word increases. If there are increases there, but their salaries will go into effect August 20th. Increase, no increase, whatever it ends up being.
Okay, that's better.
Anybody concerned, or is that a friendly amendment? So other questions? It's a roll call vote as amended. Kristen?
Clark, aye.
Bruce?
Edwards, aye.
Nate?
Jerome, I.
We're this far in the meeting. I thought you guys knew the order. Well, Pete knows he's cleanup.
Did we
Offside.
vote this and second it?
Yes. Yes, we did.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I missed that.
Go ahead, Pete.
I am saying aye.
And Brennan, I. So carries 5-0. Yeah. Now, technically speaking, Kristen made the motion for us. And if you make the motion, technically speaking, you're supposed to support the motion. So that part, I thought you were questioning that, but given that we didn't get into that, that's not a problem.
Oh, good.
Great. It carried. Let's do the superintendent's update.
So Nancy covered the meals program. Our next school committee meeting will have to be July 13th. I think that over the summer, there are going to be some members that can make the meetings, some not. And speaking with Paul, we want to keep over the summer doing 2 meetings a month with the COVID-19 issues. So we'll reach out to everybody, but July 13th, I'll work with Paul on that. Kindergarten screening is going forward next week. I'm sorry, this week. The students are coming in, having their screening take place, following all COVID-19 issues. Also on Friday, we're having the reverse rolling rally where all the students and families will be driving through our parking lot. I'll have the teachers will be outside, all the staff outside, 6 feet apart, waving goodbye to the kids on the last day of school. The 8th grade promotion video will go live on the Sutton Access channel on Thursday at 1 p.m. We had the first round of the high school graduation last week. All school awards were presented virtually on June 12th on YouTube. We're also collecting all student materials from all the students over this week. We're going to be collecting all the iPads also over the next week as well. What we've all been waiting for is the state plan and the state guidelines for opening school in the fall. There was a lot of confusion that came over the last couple of weeks when they brought out the summer guidelines. But we're anticipating those guidelines will be out either Thursday or Friday of this week. It's anticipated that it's going to be a hybrid model. And what I associate a hybrid model, meaning that no one is going to be happy. And so I think it's going to be a very difficult fall. And I think a lot of parents and a lot of educators are going to feel the strain of the plan that's going to be rolled out in the next few days. Once that happens, I've asked the teachers to take a couple of weeks and recoup, recover, and relax. Because once we get back from the 4th of July, we're going to be relying on our educators to come in or work together over the summer to do to prepare for remote learning, to prepare for reduced numbers of kids in the classroom so that we have a solid plan going into the fall to be prepared for whatever comes our way. We are working with a couple of outside agencies to provide training using Zoom and other platforms. And there is talk about potentially having 3 additional days of training and having the school year be 177 days for students. But we'll see what comes of that. Something that I didn't think of is I'm thinking only educationally, but there are going to be a lot of medical and a lot of hygienic issues that we're going to have to work with our staff and train our staff with, because I believe we're going to be asking our students to wear masks. What are the protocols if someone's sick? There's a lot to work through. So the summer is not going to be a typical summer for us in the field of education. And I'd like to leave on one positive note. You know, we have great kids in this community, and they go on and do great things. I just want to share one example. Taylor Athod was a student who graduated 4 years ago. And by the way, this is just one example. There's hundreds of these examples, thousands of them, but Taylor did everything the right way. When she was a freshman in high school, she volunteered in Barbara Bjork's special needs classroom, and she worked there all 4 years. She would give up her lunches, she'd give up her free time, she'd give up her specials, and she would go in and work with those kids. And she knew what she wanted to do with her life. She wanted to be a special education teacher, working with the student population that we educate till 22 years of age. So she went off to college. She graduated this year from the University of Missouri. She came back. She's contacted me a number of times. She's applied to a number of jobs. This past week, I get phone calls from 2 principals in the area, and Taylor is going to be working in the Auburn Public Schools as a special needs teacher. And the reason why I share that is the importance of doing the right things. God, I wish I was like Taylor when I was younger. But Taylor did all the right things. And she didn't volunteer because she had to, because it would look good on her resume, which lots and lots of kids do because they feel like that's part of getting into college. She did that for all the right reasons. And for that, I'm very proud of her. And it's just one example of what our students do when they leave Sutton Public Schools. And that's all I have.
Kristen, comments? And Bruce?
Just people of the town, please remember the Sutton Food Pantry.
Nate?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Ted, thanks for sharing that. That's great. Really always good to hear. And I also wanted to say to Paul and Ted and others, great job on the FinCom meeting. I think that went really well this year. So appreciate that. You represented school committee very well. Thank you.
Pete?
I know the 5th grade teachers went around the town today and delivered T-shirts to all the kids and kind of surprised all the kids. They weren't supposed to know they were coming, but the kids were all on social media sharing it ahead of each other, and so they all were waiting out in the yards, wait for the teachers to come by. So I guess it went really well. It was just good for the teachers and good for the kids to see each other in person. Nice.
The graduation, they're still going to shoot for a graduation ceremony in August. That's still on the books, or
August 6th.
August 6th.
If we have it, it'll be an outdoor ceremony on the field.
Lunch balances. Have we Have we looked at that? Did we close the year out? How do we deal with that? Or is it's all perfect anyway?
I haven't looked at it, to be quite honest with you. I do know that in all the things that are going on, that's just something I haven't looked at. We'll take a look
Yeah,
at it.
right. And I get it's small. It's sort of just how do we close things out, right? I mean, if you came back and said the way we closed it out is this line right here, it would at least be something we could talk through. Nancy's already closed it. Either that or she's waving hello.
No. The only part that I did look at is the seniors. So, and that was sent over to the high school. So they were following up on that. But for the rest of the students at this time, I have not.
Right.
And we do have a benefactor who will cover all the students that cannot afford to pay for their lunches.
Yeah, and I asked the question. I'm far less concerned about did we get all of the money, as I appreciate circumstances have to be considered, and just more concerned about did we close it in such a way that we don't have to go back a year and a half later and try to figure out what was going on. The next meeting on the 13th, my sense is we get a little bit deeper into conversations. You'll know a little more about next year around what's the impact to the budget, what kinds of money I still will be looking, at least for me personally, suggestions around what are non-recurring expenses that you think in order to make that happen, whatever that is, what you'll be looking for. So I think the 13th in my mind is mostly about, do we know any more about budget? I just see the one last item, unless there's. Take us home, Kristen.
I move to adjourn.
Second,
It's a roll call vote, Kristen.
Clark, aye.
Edwards, aye.
Jerome, aye.
Tough side.
And Brennan and I, carries 5-0. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.